So a few months ago, we bought a 2000 bowrider boot, and it was in
Condition.
questionable condition.
There you go.
So we might do some other videos about some work that we did on that boat, but for this particular topic, we are going to talk about the vinyl, which was in horrible condition. It's 20 years old, and this I think is the worst one. When someone tried to repair it with duct tape, and it has some really bad sun wear on it.
Some mold.
Yeah. So tell me everything we know about repairing vinyl.
Everything you know. Let me think.
We're done.
Nothing.
Right. So so we have this Singer Advance, just regular home sewing machine. This is not made for doing vinyl.
Nope.
Nope. But this is what we have, so this is what we're going to use. But we did buy ourselves some things to help us out with this. We got this little kit right here, which has one tool that we think we're going to need, which is a walking foot.
Ooh, you got a walking foot?
I got a walking foot. So the walking foot, which is a pretty, crazy update to this really kind of very basic, bottom-of-the-line machine. And we also bought some some big needles. And we got some very thick string. So we got thick string. We got 3 different needles here. We got some a 14, 16, and 18 size needle. And we're going to rig up this machine to see if we can rebuild this vinyl with some new stuff that we got.
Yeah, it's gonna be fun.
Yeah. You want to place bets? Place bets on if this is gonna work or not.
Well, if it's gonna work or how long it's gonna take. Because we'll make it.
I don't want to know either of those things.
We'll make it work.
Yeah.
But
so here's the thing. How many parts do we have? We have
parts.
We have the seats.
The seats.
We have the top, which is as big as this whole table. We have the seats in the front. We have a lot of pieces.
Wait, we're doing the captain seats?
Yeah, we took about the seats, the captain seats. So there's a lot of stuff to do. So there's 2 things here. 1,
yes,
this thing works great, and we're done. Number 2, it doesn't work, and I need to somehow
get a new machine.
somehow prove that what we need is a way better sewing machine. Although I gotta say, of all the tools that I have, I don't know that sewing machine's been ever on a list of things that I feel like I need.
That's probably true.
But I will say, I've been looking at some of the higher end machines, like $1,000 sewing machines. Like SAILRITE has a sewing machine,
one.
and it looks so fly. It's like never have I wanted something that I really have almost no use for whatsoever.
Yeah, that's
all right.
That should do.
Yeah, well, we'll see. I mean, so the catch is, how thick the vinyl is.
Right, which is it's not too thick. It's just vinyl.
It's not very thick. So I was thinking that vinyl is actually going to be pretty thick.
Yeah.
But because when they talk about sewing this, it sounds like it's going to be really hard. But this is very thin.
I bet it's just because it's not flexible and bends in weird ways, different than fabric.
Yeah, that's the other thing is figuring out how to do this. So this thing had a pattern on it originally.
It'd be like the pillow.
And we have to. What I think I'm going to do is take this whole thing apart, so that I can. I mean, this may sound crazy, but I could just make a new seat out of 1 sheet and just make the corners and call it a day, or we can take the entire thing apart and actually try to rebuild this exact seat using this color, this shape, this size, and remaking this thing. Now that would be something that someone who is really talented might try to do.
I think we should try to make one. The smallest piece. Maybe this one.
Yeah, this isn't the smallest, but it's one of the middle ones.
Try to remake this thing.
Yeah.
If it goes so smoothly, we think we can put a strip in. Put the strips in. But, if not, just make it 1 piece. Or, don't do anything too fancy.
Yeah, so there's a couple different things. We have single stitching, we have double stitching.
And you got some weird
We have piping. I bought all these things. So I bought this color, I bought this silver color, which...
Oh, you already assume we're going to do the stripe.
I bought the white. I don't think I have enough material if I don't do it the same way that it was done here. Although I will say, what they did do here is pretty clever, because they need way smaller pieces of fabric than 1 giant sheet. They have a little piece over here, a little piece over here. It's it's gonna be like a puzzle.
Very frustrating puzzle.
I don't know. So
what I think is gonna be troublesome is this corner.
Yeah, I don't know.
This could be at the pillow.
Yeah. So obviously we already took this off the back. There was a bottom, there was sides and back.
That was good.
It was stapled on with probably like 1,000 staples.
Upwards of 1,000 staples.
Oh, at least. Yeah, I'm horrified. I'm already horrified as to how this might go.
What condition is the foam in?
The foam is in actually really good condition, so that's a good point. I mean, people that have the same problem may take off this cover and find out that the foam underneath is in really bad condition or missing completely. And if that happens, then you need to get like new foam and sculpting tools to put the foam back into shape. But the foam is actually really good shape here.
Good. The
wood is in okay shape. It could be a little bit better.
Do you want to like retar? It's plywood, so any water that gets into it is gonna go.
Yeah, that's actually really interesting. There's like another material here. Bring it over.
The plastic stuff?
Yeah, this material.
Ooh,
it's not. This was what was on the bottom of the plywood. That's keeping the plywood. I don't want to say keeping it dry because there's holes in it. I can see right through it. So I mean, was this waterproof at some point? Was it intended on wicking away the water? I mean, I don't know.
I don't know either.
But
we know nothing.
It would be interesting. The wood definitely is not treated.
No.
And it would be interesting to think about if that's something that we want to do.
Yeah, I mean, I don't think we could get some like stain or tar or something.
Yeah.
I know they or
pine pitch.
Pine pitch.
Pine
yeah,
pitch. We have plenty of pine trees. That's it. We're cutting down a tree.
Scream. It'd be so awful.
Yeah.
How do they even get pine pitch?
I have no idea. We're gonna look out how to get pine pitch. Right this time. Is that it? What else do we have to do besides start?
What else?
I don't know. Let's get into it.
Let's get into it.
So, everything that I know about sewing machines, I learned in 8th grade. So, and it definitely did not include walking feet. So I'm looking at this thing now, and this foot was on here originally, and what I'm doing is I'm taking off this foot. I took this foot off completely with its mount, and then this contraption here is going to fit this walking foot. Well, let's see how it goes, eh? Yeah. When you need a lot of one color, it makes a lot of sense to just buy an entire roll. So, where I bought this, I'm assuming this is typical, it's a 30-yard roll. But I did not realize how heavy 30-yard roll is. So this thing shows in the house, and I'm just like, what? But have it on the scale, and it is 69 pounds. So moving this thing around is like, okay, I gotta move the vinyl now, so I'm gonna need a second hand. Ugh. This vinyl came from marinevinylfabric.com. This is a Singer Advance sewing machine, model number 7422. So, I'm not going to do anything fancy. I'm going to be making a straight stitch. I just need to figure out how wide I want to make my stitches. So I got this foot on. So the old foot and the whole mechanism had to come off by this screw, because you can detach the foot on these, but this actually, the whole thing comes flying off. This contraption is only slightly less complicated than a forward rear drum emergency brake. So this little guy sits on top of this arm, so when this guy goes up and down, this arm moves, kind of engaging your upper dog here. Don't really know how this works, but we are going to try it out right now. I think that's maxed out for spacing this way. So I think that's what we're gonna have to go with. I have a couple of leftover vinyl pieces here for my first cut, so I thought I would just practice to make sure that everything's gonna come together the way I want. This thing does what I need it to do. I gotta say, for all the hype around heavy duty machines, this did awesome. This one right through there like it wasn't even there. And this is looks like it went right through. It didn't bog down. It's not gonna come apart. I think it's gonna work awesome. I have two captain's chairs that look exactly like this, right? And it just kind of folds over the top of the cushion, staples underneath. I took this guy, which used to look exactly like that guy, and used a seam ripper to just tear all the seams all the way around. The manufacturer actually did me a favor a little bit here, where they put little notches in the fabric, which is where they lined them up originally to sew them. And actually this goes over here. So I just numbered them. So like that's number 1. This is number 2. So if I ever lose track of what part goes where, I can figure that out. So I'm gonna use these old parts as patterns to cut out new parts, and then I'm gonna sew them together at about, it looks like the patterns are all offset by about, I don't know, 3/8 of an inch. So I'm just gonna find 3/8 on the sewing machine and just try to follow these exact patterns to make a new part. The seam ripping, actually, it takes quite a while. I think I spent 20 minutes taking this apart. Does. Definitely better than first. What do you think? Alright, so we took some patterns from the seats and did seam ripped all the different parts. Recut the shapes out of like new vinyl, and then we sewed those back together with this machine, and it came out pretty good. And at some places there's 3 layers of vinyl, and I think it's up to 4 or 5 layers. And if you look at the stitching on the top and bottom looks pretty good, although I could tell that when it was going through like the 5 layers, it was not particularly happy, and it took a couple different attempts in order to get this to actually come out correctly. So the problem with this big machine is that it doesn't have enough tension. It can't apply enough tension in order to pull that string back up. And so when we tried to go make the work on the piping, this was an example of the piping. This is the top, and this is what the piping should have looked like. But the problem was on the bottom, there wasn't enough tension in order to pull that string back up. So this particular machine did not particularly work, and when there's too much string at the bottom, it doesn't actually hold together anymore. So I was telling a friend at work about my problems with this particular machine, and he says, "Oh, I know somebody that might have something that can help." And he brought me this. I know some people know what this is just by looking at this case. Wait for it. What? A SAILRITE LSZ-1. We're doing straight and zigzag stitching, and we're going to try to use this to put together some piping to see if it comes out better. It's really, honestly, really interesting, and the obvious thing that I know is going to make a difference is this tensioner. This tensioner you can change to all different things, and while this tensioner is on, it is ridiculously hard. So this thing is going to rock it. This is going to rock our world. We're going to be the piping masters. So I have a couple of extra, pieces of vinyl and a piece of piping here. Now what's really slick about this SAILRITE is the foot has a groove for the piping to go underneath the foot. So I should be able to just sail this right through here really easily. But we are about to find out how easy it is and if it works out or not. So I haven't done any settings or anything. I have no idea what I'm doing, but we are going to try this. The game I might need to play is figuring out where to put the needle so that lines up correctly with everything else. All right, let's see what we got. Oh, it's so nice. It's very funny. Let me do some reverse. Oh, this is so stupid nice. It's very funny. Oops. Yep. I don't think I have a cutter on this machine like I have on the other machine. Look at that! First sew! I have no idea what I'm doing, and look at it! Perfect stitches on the back, perfect stitches on the front, perfect piping in the middle. If the people that say that this is like the best machine they ever had, and give it 5 stars, and I can't believe how awesome this is, I've used this for like 30 seconds, and I already want one. This thing is awesome! It's awesome! Look at this, perfect piping. That is awesome. Another thing about this machine that is so ridiculously superior is the stitch length. So there's this mechanism here where you can control the length of the stitch, and this feeder rocks. It pulls this stuff right through. With the Singer, even with the walking foot attachment, I was like forcing the material through. And even though I had the stitch length at the absolute maximum, I still had really hit or miss stitch lengths. Like it's like really close together here, and that's a little further apart here. But the stitch length on this guy is just so much bigger. So I think that's going to be probably a lot better for the vinyl too, because there'll be less holes, and I think it will probably be stronger. I sewed these parts together, and after I was done, I noticed there's a rip in the vinyl! Tiny little tear. So my idea for fixing this tear is to take a tiny little piece of Tyvek and glue it on there. Some flexible glue. So I don't know if it's a good idea. I don't know if this is ridiculous, but that's what I'm going to do. Actually, I'm going to cut the corners off of this so it's round. And over here is where my tear was, and obviously is no confusing that that's where the tear was. But you can't really see the Tyvek on the back, which is holding this all together and making it waterproof. But I did put some glue on the front in order to hold the vinyl together, and you can kind of see how it picked up some dirt, and now I'm just dealing with that weird little thing now. But it is what it is. If I really wanted, if I really didn't like it, I guess I could have taken out that piece and resewn it, and maybe I should have. But I think this is good enough. Okay, so we've made several parts now. So we cut all the patterns and sewed them together. We did find that this second stitch on top to fold over the, I don't know, the excess here, actually makes a ton of difference in letting this part lay flat. And it actually doesn't take that long to just go over this again, but you have to be super careful because it, you can see it. So if you make a squiggly line, it's pretty horrible. But the hardest part about this entire job is getting, in this case, these two halves of the seat come together. And so there's this layer, and then there's this layer, and then where there's seams, there's like a double layer, and then there's piping that goes in the middle. And then on top of that, there's one more piece that kind of goes in the middle that holds this part of the seat down and is stapled onto the bottom board. So between this and this and this and this, there's 1, 2, 3, 4, 5. There's between 5 and I think 8 different pieces of fabric that are smashed together at the same time. And I've already made one of these, and this is the second one. And I gotta say, it is not easy to keep everything kind of like lined up. The one thing I did do is cut this piping. The piping is a little wider like this. But I cut it down a little bit because it was a little too wide for the size of what I was gonna put here. So I want to be able to line up all my parts together, and it's a lot easier if I can line up the piping instead of having the piping offset a little bit. So I am going to start. I'm going to attempt to put this entire thing together right now. Another weird problem that I had here is that we've made new parts that were the same size as the old parts, but in some cases, if you're not lining stuff up perfectly, or if they don't go together perfectly the same, I'm assuming originally the original parts were a little bit longer than they come to fit, but we cut these to fit, and in some cases we just gave it like an extra inch, and in this case the extra inch wasn't enough. So I mean, it's silly to have to do, so definitely cut long so you don't have to do like a little patch like this because it was like an inch short. So I'm not sure, people that do this for a living, if they put this together with needles or, pins, or if they staple it or what, but I'm going to just kind of wing it. Not because I think it's best, but because it's a lot less work. Alright, so just for the record, this is ridiculously difficult to do, even with this machine. There's no possible way, there's 0% chance, there's no way to do this with the Singer, with the, a non-industrial machine. Just because you're going through so many layers, and the feeders need to work like perfectly, because you're too busy lining stuff up, and it needs to just feed perfectly, and this does feed perfectly. So we're going to take this and we're going to throw it on the seat, and see how that comes out. So this is what that seat, the bottom of the seat looks like. This back piece was originally stapled on, but the staples were not stainless and they rusted out. So we're going to reconnect this with some angle brackets. The foam had a little bit of damage, but not too much. So we took a little bit of under carpet foam padding to put inside like a little groove that we cut in here, because we cut out some of the old material that was really in really bad condition. And once we get this thing back together, we're going to throw over some plastic before we put on the, this is the old plastic. We're going to throw on some plastic before we put on the vinyl, so that if there's any leaks that get through the vinyl or stuff, it won't actually damage the foam. Yep, that's it. Let's go. So I'm using T50 staples in Monel 506 M1. So I saw stainless staples when I was buying these, but apparently these are the recommended ones for marine application. I guess they're a little more corrosion resistant than stainless. And Monel is a nickel alloy, which is used a lot in marine, a lot in the U.S. Navy, because it's more better corrosion resistance than just regular stainless steel, 304, 303. Some of my screws are poking through just a tiny little bit, so I'm just going to take off the tips so that they don't stick anybody. This stuff is interesting. It serves no purpose whatsoever, except to hide this edge of staples, I guess. And I don't know if there's a tool that does this more easily, but I've been peeling up these lips and putting a staple inside the inside, and then it hides this rough edge. Is this the way that you do this? Because this seems ridiculous to me. I mean, I guess it works. It just seems very unusual. And if you're not careful, you'll catch one of these lips, and then you have to pull the staple out and try again. I'm assuming there has to be some special mechanism that holds this open while you're sliding down it, but I don't know what that is or what that would look like. That's it. So let's finish on the back side. Take one last look at the front side. Oh, looks pretty good. Double stitching looks pretty good there. Piping looks awesome. One new seat coming up. So that is the end of this project video. Over the course of about 2 weekends, I did these 4 parts and also one giant part that goes across the back of the boat, which is already back in place, but that's like 6 feet wide and like probably 4 feet long. So there's a lot of material in there, and a lot of different cuts. I have a lot of leftover material. I way overestimated how much material I was going to need. I checked around, and for this particular boat, there's no set of vinyl that you can just buy off the shelf. So your only really options are to do it yourself or to have someone rebuild them from scratch. But for about, I'd say like, I don't know, $100 in material probably or less, and a couple of weekends of your time, if you know how to sew, and if you have a very base, bottom of the line sewing machine, you can do simpler parts like these guys, and you probably need something better, like an industrial type machine or a heavy duty machine, in order to do some jobs that have a lot of parts that all connect to the same point. Because every time you have a joint, you get 2 more layers of fabric you have to cut through. So the Singer did a really good job doing 2 layers. He did 4 layers, which is basically 2 layers and a fold in there. but for the more complicated lines, I don't think it's possible. So, I guess that's it. Best of luck. Hope you can get back on the water.